And we're back. Matt, how was your week?
Oh, it's been a pretty good week, but I had a frustrating day today.
What happened?
Well, it was just I don't know if this is tech related, but it had to do with trying to link up my points with my credit cards. And my wife is the main person on the credit card, even though we've had it for 20 years. And I always do all the finances. And every time I want to make a change, they're like, well, can we speak with Mrs. Harker? I'm like, ugh, I'm at work. She's not here. She doesn't care. Like, it drives me crazy. And then I finally linked everything up to get points so that we can, get all that free great stuff. But man, it was painful. And, this credit card also isn't syncing with Mint, and I use Mint to track my financial expenses. And I
Yeah.
asked them, well, why aren't you syncing with Mint? And they said, oh, we have a block on it.
It's because we're
Okay.
Canadian.
I don't know why they have a block. And anyways, frustrating.
There's a whole subculture of credit card people that, open new credit cards to get the bonus points and then they get
Oh
the
yeah.
travel miles. And people just fly all over the world. I've been following some of the blogs and it's amazing what you can do. Maybe you should just dump that credit card you're using and find something a little more effective. Yeah.
Yeah, and just take my family to, I don't know, Disney World. See, the problem is I don't really want to spend all my time signing up for new credit cards just so that I can get a whole bunch of points, right?
Right.
For me, the credit card I have is tied in with President's Choice, and I get groceries, and I love the groceries. So, I mean, it's a lot of work to do these hacks. And I wonder if anybody's ever tracked the amount of time it takes to sign up for these new credit cards. It's also going to hit your credit score because, at least here in Canada, every time somebody does a credit check on you, it actually lowers your score just a little bit, right?
It's the
Because
same here. Yeah.
so, it makes you wonder, is it really worth it? They say, oh, I took my whole family to Disney World for $150.
And now my credit score is 550.
Yeah, it's like real. And then how many hours did you spend, running around signing up for credit cards and making sure you've got the minimum amount of payments on them and transferring everything over, like getting your rent on there and your utilities? Like, how much time did you spend doing it? And was it really worth it in the end? I don't know.
Well, maybe not, but here's the cool thing about moving countries. As soon as you decide to move to the dark side over here in the States, you leave
Yeah.
your credit history behind. When I
Oh, it's
when I
so
moved here,
true.
they were like, your credit card score is 0. And I was like, what? I've had a credit card for 10 years. Anyway, totally different system. So you can just mess it up as much as you want, Matt. Come move down here.
I know. I'm tempted to get an American credit card just so I can start building my American credit in case I ever wanted to come down there and, or you and I go into business together and do some
Yeah.
kind of side hustle. With zero credit, I can't do much.
You can do a lot in Canada.
Yeah.
I had kind of a funny thing happen to me this week. So I got a new robotic vacuum. It was the
Yes.
Roomba, yeah, the 675. It's the Wi-Fi one. So I thought it'd be
Yeah.
cool. I'm slowly building a smart home.
Yeah.
So right now I have the Nest thermostat. Pretty soon I want to do the garage door that's automatic, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I've got lots of plans for my smart home, but a automatic vacuum cleaner is definitely one of them because I don't like to sweep.
Yeah. How do you like
But
it?
it still has not successfully docked on its own.
Oh
This
no.
is the third time I've tried, and
Yeah.
every day I'm at work, it sends me a little text, "Help! I can't find my home base." So,
Help me, help me.
help. And actually, the first time I used it, it sent me a text while I was at church, and it said, "Help! I'm stuck." And when I came home, it had eaten up all of the wrapping paper that I had left in my room.
Yum,
Anyway,
yum,
it's
yum, yum, yum,
quite
yum, yum, yum.
quite effective at getting things, but it looks like there's still dust on the floor. So I don't know. I can't give it a positive review yet, but I'm working on it.
I love my robot vacuum cleaner. There's just something fantastic, even though you got to spend a whole bunch of time cleaning up your house, or else it will eat that paper. It
Yeah,
will do that. So, I mean, that's kind of a positive.
yeah.
you have to keep stuff off the ground. You have to kind of minimize and what you're doing if you want the vacuum to get in there. And so that's a positive. But yeah, I just love the text messages. I got this one where it's like, help, my brush is stuck. And so I could pull up an app on my phone. Mine actually maps out the floor.
Oh, I'm
And
jealous. Yeah.
and so I can see where it is. I'm like, oh, it's in Mila's room. And I said, I closed Mila's door so it wouldn't go in there. And I go in, and sure enough, she must have gone in and left the door open. And she has this bucket full of yarn because she loves
No.
to knit. And Rosie, that's my robot, comes up and is like, yarn, delicious. Nom, 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 nom.
And it just kept spinning and spinning.
Yeah, and I was pulling yarn out like for 10 minutes. I took out scissors and I was cutting it. And it was
I'm
all wrapped
helping.
around the wheels. Help me, I'm stuck.
Yeah, I don't know how effective these are, but they're fun, aren't they?
Yeah.
This week I wanted to talk a little bit about security. So the Marriott hotels actually have been breached. And get this, 500 million people's data is compromised. Now, in the entire United States, I think we have something like 330 million people. So that's more people, men, women, and children, than in the United States were compromised. And that's because they're an international global company.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means that hackers basically have a whole ton of information about credit card use. And Marriott came out and said, oh, well, it's encrypted. But I'm here to tell you, if they were able to get a hold of 500 million bits of your data, they're smart enough to figure out how to decrypt your credit card.
The hard part is done. You're absolutely right. They're going to be decrypting that. Now, the interesting thing that I read is that a lot of it would be like repeat uses. So if I had used a Marriott hotel 10 times in a year, then that's really only one person, but
I
yet
see.
each one of those times counted. So I don't know if it's really as many people, but it's still astronomical. In my opinion, this might be the biggest hack yet to date. Can you think of any that are bigger?
Well, there has been a ton, but think about the type of patrons that use Marriott. It's business people that have lots of money, and that if their data was compromised, it's not someone with a 500 credit score, right? It's
Yeah,
somebody that has money and they're traveling for business, and so I think a lot of people could get a lot of problems over it. Yeah.
absolutely. It is a concern. So the other thing that concerns me is how long it had been going on for. It sounds like it had been happening for years and they just caught it. So that's another concern. And if somebody had been using this data, what have they been using it for? I don't know.
Well, the other thing too, you're pretty conscious with your money, Matt. You're using Mint. You had mentioned that before. You're watching all of the ins and the outs. A lot of people don't look at their bank account on a daily
Mhm.
basis or even a weekly basis. And as long as when their paycheck comes in, they can just pay off the credit card, for them.
If they do pay off the credit card.
Exactly. But you know how many people, maybe there's a 20, 30, $50 charge there from a hacker and they don't even notice it because they're not aware of their finances. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Now, there was another website that was breached just this week. Have you heard of Quora?
No.
So Quora is pretty cool. It's just coming onto the scene. I mean, it might have been around for a few years, but it hasn't really been popular until the last year or so. It's a pretty cool idea. It's basically like Reddit where people go on and chat about a topic,
Okay.
but instead of a topic, people ask questions. So they'll say, why is the sky blue? And then people will respond and say, well, it's because of this wavelength frequency. And, as you respond to people's questions, you get points. And so it's really taken off and they get a ton of views. I think like 500 million views a day on their website. It's insane because
Wow.
people just love answering questions and sounding
Mhm.
smart. It's interesting thinking about all of these websites that are doing so well. They're really tapping into the human psyche of what makes you feel important, what makes you feel smart. Quora is one of those websites. You go on there, you feel like $1,000,000 because you're answering people's questions that, and you can sound all smart about it.
It's kind of like the new Wikipedia. Oh, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Wikipedia, the same psychological, I'm helping out the community. But actually, 100 million users had their data compromised this week, which is
Wow.
huge. And,
Yeah.
that's mostly email addresses and passwords. But, I personally don't use the same password for my email address, but I can tell you 9 times out of 10 people do.
Hmm.
If you have a Gmail account, you're using that same password for Facebook, you're using that same password for Instagram, whatever you're in, you're using the same password because you don't want to remember 10 different passwords. Probably even at work, people use the same password as their Gmail address. So with 100 million people compromised, that means that maybe they could log into your Mint account. They could put your email address into your Mint account and then use the same password and check to see if it still works. And then they've got access
And
to
it
your
may.
finances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I personally use about 6 different passwords, and I've got them category based, and I probably shouldn't do that even. And the most secure way is double verification. You can actually get a fob that Google has now that's supposed to be super secure, and so as long as you're using the fob, all their partners will automatically log you in. I mean, there's lots of things you can do, but passwords is a problem. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I have. Passwords, they now want at least 10 characters. It used to be
And
6 characters.
characters and
Yeah, and a
numbers and
capital and something funky in there and a number. And, like they're getting bigger and crazier. I've never used a password generator or whatever they're called, where it sort of manages all your passwords
yeah,
for you.
like 1Password.
Yeah, have you ever used it, and do you think it would be user friendly?
A lot of people like it. Here's the problem. If Marriott is getting compromised, maybe
Yeah,
1Password will get compromised.
and what a
So
target.
really, nobody's safe, honestly. I mean, we could have, maybe as our listeners, maybe you could tell us what you think about 1Password or anything like that that manages your passwords. I'm pretty private with things, and so I like to have separate passwords, and I just remember them. But it makes it tricky. I mean, what if you pass away and die? How are your the people that are going to inherit all of your things? How are they going to log on to all your different bank accounts with different passwords? And it gets really hairy, doesn't it?
It sure does. So I'd love to maybe hear more from our users, and maybe that's something we should research and see if we can recommend something to our listeners in the future.
Cool.
So
So
I got something I want to recommend.
yeah, let's hear it.
Electric scooters.
Woo!
So we don't have them up here in Canada, and I
It's
think
too
there's two
cold.
reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think number one is it's cold. I mean, you can only use the scooters when it's nice out. Now, up until 2 days ago, we could have been riding around on scooters because whatever snow we had was gone within days. But man, we had a
Oh.
huge amount of snow. In fact, yesterday I couldn't get out of my garage without shoveling first because we had had about 1.5 feet of snow, and it was up over the bumper of my Corolla. So what is that, 1.5 feet? Maybe even 2 feet of snow.
Holy
So
cow.
yeah, it was a lot to be dumped all at once. So you definitely can't be taking electric scooters through there. So Dan, have you used an electric scooter?
Yeah, they're a lot of fun, but they're expensive and they're obnoxious. I mean, we've talked about them a little bit before. They're just kind of junky. I mean, they're everywhere here in
Yeah,
Los Angeles. They're just on people's lawns. They're next to schools. They're just dumped everywhere. Now, the nice thing about it is if you're anywhere, there's one close to you because there's so many of them littered all over the city. And
yeah,
what's frustrating is a lot of the towns have bylaws where you cannot use a scooter in a park that's electric. You can't use it on a bike path. You can't
yeah,
use it on the beach. You can't use
yeah,
it anywhere. So basically, the only place that you're allowed to use it is on the road, which is, in my opinion, extremely dangerous. Now, they do
yeah,
have lights on them at night, which I like. But when you're driving on the road, not every city has a bike lane for you to be in.
hmm,
And what if somebody opens their car door when you're scooting past, you're gonna get hooked. And
Move.
it really could happen. So one night, some friends and I from Canada, we just all thought it would be fun to rent one. Now, here's something interesting about these scooters is you
Yeah.
have to be an American citizen because it asks for your American driver's license. Now, my friends from
Ah,
Canada, they all tried to use their Canadian licenses and it
no.
would not work. So they all had to use mine, which was fine. They just paid me back, but it's not cheap. I thought,
What if you don't have a driver's license?
you
Can't.
can't use it.
Oh,
Maybe there's a way, but
yeah.
the real simple way to set up was like scan in your driver's license.
Yeah.
And then my friends that didn't have a local license couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So that's not to say there isn't another way around it. I'm not sure there probably is, but that's step one. Number two, it was expensive. I mean, if you catch an Uber for a couple miles, it's like $4 or $5. You
Yeah.
split an Uber, even cheaper. This scooter, I had it for maybe 15 minutes and it was like $6. And I barely
Really?
went anywhere because there was all these stoplights and I mean
Yeah.
it just didn't seem economically it didn't make sense to me at all.
So I actually did a little bit of research on this, and it didn't seem very expensive at all. What I found is Lyme, for example, charges $1 and then 15 cents per minute. So
Okay.
I guess it depends how long you had it under your name. So maybe when you're done, like if you're just whipping around downtown and you just want to get somewhere quick, it might be pretty cheap as long as you figure out how to get it off of the ticker, right? That's going
Maybe.
15 cents every minute. And so I actually had a question for you. Like, if these scooters are all over the lawn, like, how does Lime or Bird or any of the others know where their scooters are?
It's GPS located. And
Okay.
it's pretty cool. There are actually people that, as a side hustle, will take trucks
Yeah.
and they'll just load up the back of the
Just
truck
pick them
with,
up.
and they'll pick them up and then they'll plug them in and they'll make money that way because Lime will pay them. But I don't know about you, but every time I put my air conditioning on in my house,
Mm-hmm.
it's like literally $5 a day to do that. So I mean, it's not cheap here in Southern California to plug anything in.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you've got solar on your house, I think it's a terrible idea to plug these into your house and expect that you're going to make more money that way.
Oh, so they
Um,
plug them into their own homes?
Correct. Yeah, because and they're
Ooh.
incentivized by, charging them because Lime doesn't want to go around and charge them all. They say you
No.
charge them, we'll pay you. But either you're living at your parents' home and your parents don't know what you're up to in the backyard, hooking all these scooters up to their power grid, or you've got
Or your neighbor?
solar power, yeah, or your neighbor, or maybe a public. I don't know, but I don't think it's a good deal.
Yeah.
And even when I was using the scooter, I didn't feel like it was a good deal. It was $5 for that little amount of time, $5 or $6,
Yeah.
and we really didn't get anywhere. And it was dangerous because I didn't have a helmet with me. I mean, who
Yeah.
carries a helmet with them?
Nobody.
No.
So
So
I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So first of all, I think these scooters, if you went out to buy them yourself, they're about $500 a scooter.
right.
So I was just trying to understand the business model a little bit. If Lime spends $500 on a scooter, then they're probably going to need 50 rides or so until they pay off the scooter, let alone make any money. And plus, they're paying people to pick them up. They just leave them all over the lawns. Like, I was just really wondering if the business model is working. Obviously, it is, because here's some interesting statistics. Lime has logged over 20 million rides.
Wow.
20 million. So let's just say the average is $5. You spent $6, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money,
That's a
right?
lot of money. It is,
And
but it's a fad, Matt. Like
yeah,
it's like pogo sticks. Everyone had them and now nobody has them.
nobody has a
I'm
pogo stick.
I'm telling
But
you
hula
this
hoops are still around. They're just not crazy.
barely. I'm telling you these aren't practical. They're dangerous.
Yeah,
Because they really have a good
yeah,
kick. Like if I was worried to go the full speed
yeah,
without a helmet on. I mean, I was, in the streets of Santa Monica
yeah.
on a street, not on a bike path. And I tried to go full throttle, and it was way too fast. Someone could have
Yeah,
opened their door and hit me, and someone could have swerved or tried to turn right into my lane. There were so many things that could have
yeah.
happened that it just was not wise. And
So let's talk
another,
about that. Let's
yeah,
talk about how dangerous these things are. So I also did a little bit of research, and it turns out that in California, it's illegal to ride these things without a helmet, at least until, let me just see here. It's just been repealed. So Bird is, I think, the second biggest one out there, and they've logged over 10 million rides. They lobbied the government to repeal California's electric scooter helmet law.
and did they?
So they did. It's successful. So right now it's still illegal to wear a helmet, to not wear a helmet. But I think in January of 2019, thanks to Bird, you don't need to wear a helmet. But who
No
does anyways,
way.
right?
Well, that's crazy because someone was telling me the other day that cops are pulling people over and writing them tickets for not having
Because
helmets.
they can right now.
And they were writing tickets for them being in public parks, on bike paths, on all
Yeah.
these places where they shouldn't be. And it's funny, this was me being responsible, but I see people all of the time on sidewalks that are
Yeah.
extremely dangerous because there's old ladies walking and they're zipping by them on a sidewalk.
So are they not allowed on a sidewalk?
No, they're not allowed on a sidewalk.
Because every picture I've seen online, they're on sidewalks.
Well, it's
And
like a
like,
bike's not supposed to be on a
yeah,
sidewalk, right? Like if
yeah,
you're on a bike, you're on the road, right?
yeah,
You're in the
yeah,
bike lane.
yeah.
You're not supposed to be on the sidewalk. And this thing has a motor, so if you're heading towards grandma, you're gonna hit her and it's gonna hurt because
Yes.
you're going fast.
And just think about hitting walls. So here's another thing that I researched on these things. They're averaging, this is the guess, 1,000 emergency room visits per month.
Really?
Yes, 1,000 per month. And then they listed like the types of injuries that they're seeing. Now, California is recording these things, but they're all over the place. They're not just in California. Like I think Dallas has them as
Yeah,
well. And
Austin, yeah.
yeah. And so apparently a lot of people are hitting walls, right? Like they just get going too fast and then they'll hit a wall. Well, you're going to want a helmet, right? There was an interesting quote in here. Let's see if I could find it where they were talking. It goes, if you hit the ground at 20 miles per hour on a scooter or a baseball bat hits your head at 20 miles per hour, it's the same
It's
thing.
the same thing.
So,
Oh
so
man.
wear a helmet. And then I guess Lyme and Bird are both trying to give away free helmets because it's like bad PR, right? Where
Well,
these
where are you
scooters
gonna put
don't
it?
come with
I
helmets.
mean, I mean, are you gonna just wear a backpack everywhere?
And
And
just take your helmet with, and you're
just
not
put,
gonna put a helmet with the scooter because then you got head lice and gross, like
yeah, you would never put it's not gonna work. Mark my words, in 5 years this is over because it's a fad. And people think it's fun now, but it really isn't cheap enough to replace Uber, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would like to do with it, I was just thinking last time I was in San Francisco, we wanted to go to Pier 39 and you were way down in the south and I was way down in the north and we were trying to find each other, remember all that? I mean, if one of us had a scooter, we probably could have
Faster.
gone a lot faster. So, like as a tourist it might be kind of nice, but that's about as far as I would go.
This is a step below a Segway as being creepy and weird, and you're not even exercising.
No, you're not exercising at all. And by the way, Segway makes these things.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
that's
do.
not
Yeah,
surprising.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think Limes are all Segway. Maybe, maybe not. I remember when I was reading it, somebody out there, either Lime or Bird, mostly has Segways. And Lime is now designing their own scooters. So they're going to
Cool.
get into the production of them, and that's probably going to save them a lot of money in the long run. But I'm kind of with you on this one, Dan. I think it is a fad. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's going to be shut down because of the danger. I mean, think about these scooters, just the maintenance of them, right? Who's making sure the brakes work? Who's making sure that the steering works? Like, you've got that issue, plus people who probably shouldn't be on them at all. They say you shouldn't weigh any more than 220 pounds. That's
Oh,
on
for sure. I've seen
Lime's
some people
website.
bigger than that. Yeah.
Yeah, like 220 pounds. Dan, I'm 190. That's not much more than I am, right?
You're skin and bones.
Little skin and bones on a scooter. So I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, I'd be interested to see if they made an IPO though. I wouldn't invest because
No.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
Short it. Short it.
Short it. And now you had put an article up about Steam having a
Yeah.
little bit of competition. Who's doing that?
Yeah, so it's Epic Games. These are the guys that bring us Fortnite, and I think they are like breaking records left and right for the amount of money they're making on Fortnite. I mean, it's crazy money they make. And so they were in the news a couple months ago when they said, we're skipping the Google Store, Google Play
Right.
Store, and you have to come to our website to download Fortnite. And that was a big deal because you and I talked about, well, do you trust sites like that? And then there were all these phishing sites out there that were pretending to be Epic's site, and anything that had to do with Fortnite that you're installing on your Android outside of the Play Store was full of malware. So it was a big deal. We talked about that a couple podcasts ago. But I guess they've been so successful that with Fortnite that they want to create their own store, online storefront.
This is not surprising to me, and it's actually kind of sad for Google. Because if they had put their foot down like the Apple Store does, they wouldn't be in this mess.
Yeah,
Now
if
they're
they just
losing.
said no, you have to use our website or nothing at all, right? And then you would have to go through crazy side loading techniques. And you know what? If you really want something that bad that's not in the store, then go ahead and do the crazy side loading and try to figure that out, kind of like I was doing when I was jailbreaking iPhones back in the past. Eh,
What?
back before I switched over to Android. But here's what's interesting about it. I think that they're going to give Steam a run for their money. It's all about splitting the revenue with the developer. I guess with Steam, it's a 70-30 split. So
Right.
70% of the proceeds go to the developer. With Epic, it's going to be 88%
Wow.
stay with the developer. So it's
So
an 88-12 split.
you're saying third-party game makers can give their game to Epic. You're not talking about only things that Epic makes.
No, it would be you and I create a game and we could go to Steam and sell it and we'd make 70% of the proceeds, or we could go
Mm.
to Epic and make 88% of the proceeds. So that is a big deal. And then they're also saying no required DRM for the
Nice.
software that you put there. So, it's something I want to watch and see what happens. Personally, I'm concerned with the malware that has been targeting Epic, but I hope that they have enough money and they're secure enough that perhaps they can make a go of it and give Steam a little bit of run of their money. I love Steam. I don't know. Are you on Steam, Dan?
Briefly, yeah. There were some games that I wanted to download. I mean, it's been years since I've gone to the mall and purchased a game.
Yeah, that's right.
We're doing it on the cloud now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I can tell you, my son, he's on Steam and all of his buddies are on Steam. So if they're not playing on the PlayStation or his buddies have Xbox, so PlayStation or Xbox are the console, the big ones. If they're not on those, then they're on Steam.
Cool.
And yeah, so Steam's making tons of money off the next generation. And I think Epic is also trying to zero in on it because who's playing Fortnite? Everybody. But
Yeah.
I'm sure a good portion of it is the next generation that are teenagers and younger.
Cool. So this week, actually today, Qualcomm announced the new Snapdragon 855
Ooh.
and its new under-display fingerprint sensor. So this is pretty cool because we've seen a few cell phones try to have the under-the-display
Hmm.
fingerprint sensor, but the fact that this is Qualcomm now is going to really make it across the board a lot more unified for all of the cell phone
Yeah.
makers out there.
And make it faster.
Yeah.
So that's the key. Because right now, I know the OnePlus 6T has an under screen fingerprint sensor, and all the reviews I'm reading say, hey, it's great, it's sweet, it works as it's supposed to work, but it's not as fast as previously just pushing a fingerprint sensor on the back or on
Right.
the side.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how fast it is. But there's a few cool things with this new chipset. Number one, it's supporting multi-gigabit 5G, which
Sweet.
is awesome. And that's going to be something really huge in 2019. We're going to see a lot more 5G adaptation. And it also features a new multi-core artificial intelligence engine. And so it's
Ooh.
supposed to be 3 times better with AI performance. What kind of things would you do for artificial intelligence on your phone? Well, things like your Google Assistant would
Yeah,
be
voice
artificial
recognition.
intelligence, voice recognition, plenty of things with developers when they're creating content would use artificial intelligence. So that's baked right into the phone, which is awesome. Um, there's also going to be a really cool photography feature on this. Have you heard of Google's Nightlight before?
Of course. I mean, it looks amazing. I almost wanted to get a Pixel 3 just for that because Pixels are known for photography. And Dan, the stuff I've seen on this, one of the YouTube bloggers I saw, he called it witchcraft. Like he's like, this is witchcraft. This is not technology. He showed a picture before and then after he turned on the feature and it was crazy. Literally night and day. Like and he's
Wow.
like, this is witchcraft, Google.
Well, the cool thing about this is this new 855 chipset is supposed to have really similar photography. So it's going to make things a little more competitive where you're not going to have to buy a Pixel every time. Maybe you could get a One Plus that has this
Sweet.
chipset next year with it, which is really cool.
So Dan, did they say what phones are already lining up for the 855? Is this going to be the typical chip that we're going to see in flagship phones like the
I
845 is now?
I sure hope so. I think it will be, and we'll have to see in Madrid next February
Hmm.
when the big phones come out. But as far as the article I read today, it was actually in a foreign language, and so I had to translate it. It was very hot off the presses.
That's very hot off the press.
But they do say that this is going to be kind of an elite gaming chip, and that a lot of people, maybe if you like Fortnite, it'll really speed things up for you. So you get
Yeah.
those frames per second, right?
Oh, I saw an article today that actually said that certain games on Android phones are going to be able to access 60 frames per second.
Be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like on a television. And so if you're a Fortniter or anything that really requires those frames per second, then yeah, there are some phones that can do it, Dan. It's amazing what phones can do.
That is amazing. And I heard though that unfortunately the code for Fortnite, as of today, still does not support 60 frames a second on Android. I
Oh,
heard though maybe on iPhone. I was just reading articles this week, so maybe the users can, pop up and tell us for
yeah.
sure. But from what I understand, it's stuck at 30. But with this new
Yeah.
855 chipset, let's boost it up. Yeah.
I only know of two Android phones that can actually handle that kind of processing power, and I don't think Apple's there yet. And the two are is the Razer phone, so that
Yeah,
one's
the
made for
gaming phone.
gaming. And then
Yeah.
there's another one, I'll have to scroll through our notes to see it, but it actually comes with like a fan that you attach as a module to the back of the phone that will cool off the processor.
Holy
So
cow.
those are the only two phones that I know of that are capable of that. But just watch. I mean, it's amazing. Like I said, what can phones do now? They're way more powerful than our computers were 10 years ago.
That's
And
true.
and it's in our phone. I mean, we could launch rockets. You look at what like Sputnik. I mean, Texas Instrument computer or calculator is smarter than Sputnik, right? So and that thing's been orbiting Earth forever. So
Yeah.
it's amazing what we can do.
It's wild and it's exciting. In fact, another really exciting thing I wanted to bring up is Sony just patented a smartphone with a transparent display.
What's
Um,
that?
so
All
think
aren't all phones transparent?
well, think about it this way. Have you ever watched a movie where, it's in the future and they're looking at like a computer monitor, a computer screen, and it's transparent, so you can see what's on the computer screen, but you can see what's
Oh,
behind it too.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And so,
Minority Report, right? Where,
yeah,
yeah,
there's not really a lot of practical application to this, but
yeah,
it looked really cool. And in the patent that I read, they actually had it where you could fold it, kind of like the Samsung phone we talked about on
yeah.
the other podcast, but you could actually make one of the screens opaque underneath, or you can
Oh,
make the top one translucent, or you can make them both translucent. It just seems cool. I'm not really sure what the applications of that would be,
sure.
um, but it sure would look cool. I mean, Steve Jobs originally wanted to make the iPhone a sheet of glass with
Yeah,
no ports, with no
yeah.
buttons. And imagine if that sheet of glass was transparent when you turned it off. How cool would that be, right? To have
Yeah,
it
it'd be pretty sweet. Yeah.
just a piece of glass, and then you pick it up, and then all of a sudden, it turns opaque, and it would be really neat, I think.
That'd be cool. I mean, there's been some things that are going on right now. Have you seen Samsung's televisions where they look like a picture frame?
Yes, I like that.
And
Yeah.
they take a picture. They're not transparent at all, but they take a picture of the wall behind them. And so if the lights are on or ever
Oh,
ambient light, it kind of guesses. And so it always just looks like the wall, and then they float art in front of it. And
cool.
it so it's kind of like augmented reality. I
In a
mean,
way.
if you put it on a visor, or I mean, that's kind of what they're doing now.
Now you've got a lot of leaks that you want to talk about real quick, right?
Yeah, let's talk about the leaky Samsung Galaxy S10. So there's always a new S10 rumor, and that's probably because it's the next major flagship that's going to be released. And Madrid in the new year, we're going to see a lot of phones announced, but even before that, we'll see a lot of phones announced at CES. So Samsung in the past, so in January, they've released phones traditionally at CES. Sometimes they'll release a few more like a month later in Madrid. And then in the last 3, 4 years, I think ever since the S5, so 5 years, they've been releasing them with their own events, kind of like Apple has been doing.
Yeah.
So here's the latest leaks. Number one, we know that there's going to be a lot of cameras, and there's basically 4 versions of the S10 that we are aware of, and
Whoa.
each one of those versions is going to have a different number of cameras. Kind of weird, but that's how it's looking. So here's their code names. Samsung S10 Beyond Zero. So the
Nice.
Beyond Zero is a 5.8 inch with 3 cameras.
It has
One
more than
selfie,
zero cameras. Yeah.
more than zero. So one selfie, 2 on the back. Very
Cool.
similar to most
Very
phones that we have
right.
today. The S10 Beyond 1 is a 6.1 inch with 4 cameras, 2 selfie, 2 on the back.
Whoa.
So they're going with the double selfie, probably for the extra wide angle, a lot like the Pixel 3s have. Now, here's the Bazongo one. It's the S10 Beyond 2, and
Whoa.
it's 6.4 inches, so it's a really
Okay.
big screen, 5 cameras, and it's gonna have 2 selfie, 3 back. So,
What would you do with that third one?
well, it's kind of like the P20, the Huawei P20, or is it Xiaomi? I think it's Huawei. Anyways, Huawei has 3 cameras, and so one is wide angle,
Hmm.
one is telephoto, and I think the third one could be depth sensing, or it could be a monochrome that picks up more detail. And
Cool.
Samsung already has one with 4 cameras on the back. And so what they have, and actually they use a lidar idea. So let's just see if I can find it here. They have the A9. It has an ultra wide on the back. It has a wide, and it has a telephoto plus a depth. So the very last phone, so those are 3. We know there's going to be 4 variants at least. The fourth one is going to be a 5G phone. So of all these, it's going to be the only one capable of 5G.
Maybe
It's
with the
going to,
855 chipset, yeah?
yeah, probably 6.7-inch screen. So
Nice.
huge, 12 gigabytes of RAM,
Dang.
sweet, a terabyte of storage.
Dang.
Now the Note 9 kind of claims a terabyte, but it has 512, and then you can put another 512 chip in it. So 6 cameras. So it's going to have 2 selfies, 4 on the back, and so we're guessing it's going to be like the A9 with an ultra wide, a wide, a telephoto, and then a depth sensor. So I was asking, what is this depth sensor? And I did a little bit of research. So it's called a 3D time of flight sensor. And what it does is it sends infrared dots out, and then it times how long it takes for that infrared light to
Mhm.
bounce off of objects and come back. So it's extremely accurate when it comes to focusing and knowing how far things are. So I imagine this is going to help with the bokeh effect where you blur things in the background. It's
Mhm.
probably going to be super quick focus. You can like tap on different objects like you currently can on your phones, and it's going to just make sure that you get all the proper focuses. So it sounds like that's the direction that they're going. And the A9 already has a depth sensor. It's just not a 3D time of flight sensor. So I guess we'll just have to see what benefits it will have. But I on the researching, it was crazy. They said it's similar to lidar. So lidar is what self-driving cars are using as they shoot out all these little points all over the place, and then they can identify a
Cool.
bicycle, some crazy person without a helmet on a scooter, and like all
It's
these.
me.
It's Dan. So that's what's pretty neat that's leaking on the web right now. It sounds like this S10 5G is just going to be amazing, and if it gets, as you were saying, that night sight witchcraft to be able to
Yeah.
take pictures in the dark, and as Google said in their Pixel 3 event, they want to eliminate flashes off of phones.
Holy cow.
That would be awesome.
That would be really cool, and I can already see a lot of people on Saturday Night Live and other things making fun of how many cameras are on these phones.
Oh yeah.
And we'll start right now. It happened here. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened
Yeah.
here. We're the first. Probably not the first, but
First. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, if you want to be first, please put your first comment below. Also, subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We love chatting with you, and we will chat at you next week.
Talk to you later.